Welcome to the channel Next Gen Tech Prep. In today's video, we are diving deep into essential questions and comprehensive answers for the Microsoft Fabric Analytics Engineer Associate certification. Whether you're preparing for an exam or just looking to sharpen your knowledge, you're in the right place. If you find this content valuable, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Now, let's get started.
You have a Fabric tenant that contains a workspace named Workspace 1 and a user named User 1. User 1 is assigned the contributor role for Workspace 1. You plan to configure Workspace 1 to use an Azure DevOps repository for version control. You need to ensure that User 1 can commit items to the repository. Which two settings should you enable for User 1? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. The options are: Option A, users can sync workspace items with GitHub repositories. Option B, users can create and use data workflows. Option C, users can create Fabric items. Option D, users can synchronize workspace items with their Git repositories.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: Fabric tenant, Azure DevOps repository, version control, commit items, tenant settings.
The correct answers are Option C, users can create Fabric items, and Option D, users can synchronize workspace items with their Git repositories.
Why is this correct? C, users can create Fabric items must be enabled because users need permission to create and manage Fabric content before they can commit or synchronize those items. D, users can synchronize workspace items with their Git repositories is the core tenant setting required to enable Git integration and allow users to commit changes to Azure DevOps. Why are the others incorrect? A, this setting applies specifically to GitHub repositories, whereas the scenario requires configuring integration with an Azure DevOps repository. B, users can create and use data workflows relates to Apache Airflow workloads and is not a requirement for Git integration or committing workspace items.
You have a Fabric tenant that contains a workspace named Workspace 1. Workspace 1 contains a data pipeline named Pipeline 1 and a lakehouse named Lakehouse 1. You perform the following actions: create a workspace named Workspace 2, create a deployment pipeline named Deploy Pipeline 1 that will deploy items from Workspace 1 to Workspace 2, add a folder named Folder 1 to Workspace 1. Move Lakehouse 1 to Folder 1, run Deploy Pipeline 1. Which structure will Workspace 2 have when Deploy Pipeline 1 is complete? The options are: Option A /Folder 1 /Pipeline 1 /Folder 1 /Lakehouse 1. Option B /Pipeline 1 /Lakehouse 1. Option C /Pipeline 1 /Folder 1 /Lakehouse 1. Option D /Folder 1 /Lakehouse 1.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: deployment pipeline, data pipeline, lakehouse, folder 1, workspace 1 to workspace 2.
The correct answer is Option D /Folder 1 /Lakehouse 1.
Why is this correct? D, Fabric deployment pipelines support lakehouses but do not support data pipelines. Therefore, Pipeline 1 is not deployed to Workspace 2. Since Lakehouse 1 is in Folder 1, it is deployed to Workspace 2, preserving its folder structure, resulting in /Folder 1 /Lakehouse 1. Why are the others incorrect? A, this option is incorrect because data pipelines are not supported by Fabric deployment pipelines, and Pipeline 1 was never moved into Folder 1 in the source workspace. B, this option is incorrect because data pipelines are not supported by deployment pipelines, and Lakehouse 1 would not be deployed to the root since it resides in Folder 1. C, this option is incorrect because data pipelines are not supported by Fabric deployment pipelines, meaning Pipeline 1 will not be deployed to Workspace 2.
Your company has a finance department. You have a Fabric tenant, an Azure storage account named Storage 1, and a Microsoft Entra group named Group 1. Group 1 contains the users in the finance department. You need to create a new workspace named Workspace 1 in the tenant. The solution must meet the following requirements: ensure that the finance department users can create and edit items in Workspace ONE. Ensure that Workspace ONE can securely access Storage ONE to read and write data. Ensure that you are the only admin of Workspace ONE. Minimize administrative effort. You create Workspace ONE. Which two actions should you perform next? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. The options are: Option A, assign the contributor role to Group 1. Option B, create a workspace identity. Option C, assign the admin role to yourself. Option D, assign the contributor role to each finance department user.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: create and edit items in Workspace ONE, securely access Storage ONE, Group 1 contains the users, minimize administrative effort, only admin of Workspace ONE.
The correct answers are Option A, assign the contributor role to Group 1. And Option B, create a workspace identity.
Why is this correct? A. Assigning the contributor role to Group 1 allows all finance department users to create and edit items in Workspace ONE while minimizing administrative effort by managing access at the group level. B. Creating a workspace identity enables Workspace ONE to securely authenticate and access Azure Storage, Storage ONE, using a managed identity, allowing secure read and write operations. Why are the others incorrect? C. Assigning the admin role to yourself is redundant because, as the creator of Workspace ONE, you are automatically assigned the admin role by default. D. Assigning the contributor role to each individual user increases administrative effort compared to assigning it to Group 1, violating the requirement to minimize administrative effort.
You have a Fabric tenant. You are creating a Fabric data factory pipeline. You have a stored procedure that returns the number of active customers and their average sales for the current month. You need to add an activity that will execute the stored procedure in a warehouse. The returned values must be available to the downstream activities of the pipeline. Which type of activity should you add? The options are: Option A, get metadata. Option B, switch. Option C, lookup. Option D, append variable.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: execute the stored procedure, returned values must be available to the downstream activities, Fabric data factory pipeline.
The correct answer is Option C, lookup.
Why is this correct? C. The lookup activity can execute a stored procedure in a data warehouse and return the resulting dataset, making those values available to subsequent downstream activities in the pipeline. Why are the others incorrect? A. The get metadata activity is used to retrieve metadata about a dataset or file, such as existence, size, or structure, not to execute stored procedures or return query results. B. The switch activity is a control flow activity used to evaluate an expression and route execution to different branches, rather than executing database queries or stored procedures. D. The append variable activity is used to append a value to an existing array variable defined within the pipeline, not to execute stored procedures or fetch data from a warehouse.
You have a query in Microsoft Power BI Desktop that contains two columns named order_date and shipping_date. You need to create a column that will calculate the number of days between order_date and shipping_date for each row. Which Power Query function should you use? The options are: Option A, date time. Local now. Option B, duration. Days. Option C, duration. From. Option D, date. Add days.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: calculate the number of days between order_date and shipping_date, Power Query function.
The correct answer is Option B, duration. Days.
Why is this correct? B. Duration days extracts the day component from a duration value. Subtracting order_date from shipping_date yields a duration, and duration days is used to return the number of whole days as an integer. Why are the others incorrect? A. DateTime.local now returns the current system date and time, which is unrelated to calculating the difference between two existing date columns. C. Duration from converts a value into a duration value, but it does not extract the number of days as an integer from the difference of two dates. D. Date.addDays adds a specified number of days to a date value, rather than calculating the difference in days between two dates.
You have a Fabric tenant that contains a semantic model. You need to modify object-level security, OLS, for the model. What should you use? The options are: Option A, the Fabric service. Option B, Microsoft Power BI Desktop. Option C, ALM Toolkit. Option D, Tabular Editor.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: Fabric tenant, semantic model, modify object-level security, OLS.
The correct answer is option D, Tabular Editor.
Why is this correct? D. Tabular Editor is an external tool that allows you to define and modify object-level security, OLS, on tables and columns in a semantic model, which is not natively configurable via the Power BI Desktop GUI or Fabric service. Why are the others incorrect? A. The Fabric service does not provide a user interface to configure or modify object-level security, OLS, definitions directly within the semantic model. B. Microsoft Power BI Desktop does not natively support the creation or modification of object-level security, OLS, rules through its standard user interface. An external tool like Tabular Editor is required. C. ALM Toolkit is a schema comparison and deployment tool for Power BI semantic models, but it is not used to author or modify object-level security, OLS, rules.
You have a Microsoft Power BI semantic model that contains a measure named total sales amount. Total sales amount returns a sales revenue amount that is translated into a selected currency. You need to ensure that the value returned by total sales amount is formatted to use the correct currency symbol. What should you include in the solution? The options are: Option A, a field parameter. Option B, a linguistic schema. Option C, a dynamic format string. Option D, the window DAX function.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords, translated into a selected currency, formatted to use the correct currency symbol.
The correct answer is option C, a dynamic format string.
Why is this correct? C. A dynamic format string allows you to define the format of a measure conditionally using a DAX expression, enabling the currency symbol to change dynamically based on the selected currency context. Why are the others incorrect? A. Field parameters allow users to dynamically change the measures or dimensions being analyzed in a report, but they do not control the conditional formatting of currency symbols within a single measure. B. A linguistic schema is used to customize Q&A natural language queries in Power BI and does not affect the visual formatting or currency symbols of measures. D. The window DAX function is a windowing function used for performing calculations over a slice of data, like moving averages, not for formatting measure values.
You plan to use Fabric to store data. You need to create a data store that supports the following: writing data by using T-SQL multi-table transactions, dynamic data masking. Which type of data store should you create? The options are: Option A, KQL database. Option B, Lakehouse. Option C, warehouse. Option D, semantic model.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords: writing data by using T-SQL, multi-table transactions, dynamic data masking.
The correct answer is option C, warehouse.
Why is this correct? C. The Fabric Data Warehouse fully supports T-SQL DML operations for writing data, natively handles multi-table ACID transactions, and includes advanced security features like dynamic data masking. Why are the others incorrect? A. A KQL database is optimized for append-only streaming data using Kusto query language, KQL, and lacks support for T-SQL DML, multi-table transactions, and dynamic data masking. B. While a Fabric Lakehouse provides a SQL endpoint for reading data via T-SQL, it requires Apache Spark, e.g., PySpark, Scala, to write data, not T-SQL. D. A semantic model is an analytical layer designed for querying via DAX or MDX. It is not a transactional data store that supports T-SQL writes or dynamic data masking.
You have a Fabric tenant that contains a workspace named Workspace 1 and a user named User 1. Workspace 1 contains a warehouse named DW1. You share DW1 with User 1 and assign User 1 the default permissions for DW1. What can User 1 do? The options are: Option A, build reports by using the default dataset. Option B, read data from the tables in DW1. Option C, connect to DW1 via the Azure SQL Analytics endpoint. Option D, read the underlying Parquet files from OneLake.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords Fabric tenant, warehouse, share, default permissions.
The correct answer is option C, connect to DW1 via the Azure SQL Analytics endpoint.
Why is this correct? C. Sharing a Fabric warehouse with default permissions grants the read permission. This permission allows the user to connect to the warehouse via its SQL connection string, SQL Analytics endpoint, but does not grant data access permissions by default. Why are the others incorrect? A. Building reports using the default dataset requires the build permission on the default semantic model, which is not included in the default share permissions. B. Reading data from tables in the warehouse requires read data permissions or explicit SQL level select permissions, which are not granted by default. D. Reading the underlying Parquet files directly from OneLake requires read all OneLake data permission, which is not part of the default share permissions.
You have a Fabric tenant named Tenant1 that contains a Lakehouse named Lakehouse1. You need to add data to Lakehouse1 from a CSV file in an Azure storage account outside of Fabric. The solution must minimize development effort. What should you use to add the data? The options are: Option A, copy job. Option B, shortcut. Option C, pipeline. Option D, data flow gen 2.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords Lakehouse, CSV file and an Azure storage account, minimize development effort.
The correct answer is option B, shortcut.
Why is this correct? B. Creating a shortcut allows you to reference external data directly in Lakehouse1 without copying or moving it, requiring the absolute minimum development effort in setup. Why are the others incorrect? A. A copy job requires configuring data movement and scheduling, which involves more development effort and results in data duplication. C. A pipeline requires building and orchestrating an ETL process to ingest the data, which is more complex and time-consuming than creating a shortcut. D. Data flow gen 2 is an ETL tool that requires designing data transformations and mapping schemas, leading to significantly higher development effort.
You have a Fabric tenant. You are creating a Fabric data factory pipeline. You have a stored procedure that returns the number of active customers and their average sales for the current month. You need to add an activity that will execute the stored procedure in a warehouse. The returned values must be available to the downstream activities of the pipeline. Which type of activity should you add? The options are: Option A, append variable. Option B, script. Option C, stored procedure. Option D, get metadata.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords execute the stored procedure in a warehouse, returned values must be available to the downstream activities, Fabric data factory pipeline.
The correct answer is option B, script.
Why is this correct? B. The script activity can execute SQL statements and stored procedures, returning the resulting row sets as output that downstream activities can consume. The stored procedure activity does not support returning query result sets to subsequent pipeline activities. Why are the others incorrect? A. The append variable activity is used to add a value to an existing array variable defined in the pipeline, and cannot execute database stored procedures. C. The stored procedure activity executes a stored procedure in a database but does not return the query's output results set to downstream pipeline activities. D. The get metadata activity is used to retrieve metadata about storage or database objects, such as file existence or structure, not to execute stored procedures.
You have a Fabric workspace named Workspace 1. Workspace 1 contains multiple semantic models, including a model named Model 1. Model 1 is updated by using an XMLA endpoint. You need to increase the speed of the write operations of the XMLA endpoint. What should you do? The options are: Option A, delete any unused semantic models from Workspace 1. Option B, select large semantic model storage format for Workspace 1. Option C, configure Model 1 to use the direct lake storage format. Option D, delete any unused columns from Model 1.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords Fabric Workspace, XMLA endpoint, increase the speed of the write operations, semantic model.
The correct answer is option B, select large semantic model storage format for Workspace 1.
Why is this correct? B. Enabling the large semantic model storage format allows the XMLA endpoint to perform write operations much faster because it optimizes memory allocation and allows for parallel processing of partitions during write and refresh operations. Why are the others incorrect? A. Deleting unused semantic models frees up capacity storage but does not directly optimize or accelerate the XMLA write performance for Model 1. C. Direct lake storage format is designed for fast read access directly from OneLake Delta tables, but it does not support or optimize traditional XMLA write operations in the same way. D. Deleting unused columns reduces the model size and improves query performance, but it does not optimize the underlying write and commit performance of the XMLA endpoint.
You have a Fabric workspace named Workspace 1. You need to create a semantic model named Model 1 and publish Model 1 to Workspace 1. The solution must meet the following requirements: can revert to previous versions of Model 1 as required, identifies differences between saved versions of Model 1, uses Microsoft Power BI equals iDesktop to publish to Workspace 1. Can edit item definition files by using Microsoft Visual Studio Code. Which two actions should you perform? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. The options are: Option A, enable Git integration for Workspace 1. Option B, save Model 1 in Power BI Desktop as a PBIT file. Option C, enable users to edit data models in the Power BI service. Option D, save Model 1 in Power BI Desktop as a PBIP file.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords revert to previous versions, identifies differences, edit item definition files, Visual Studio Code.
The correct answers are Option A, enable Git integration for Workspace 1. And Option D, save Model 1 in Power BI Desktop as a PBIP file.
Why is this correct? A. Enabling Git integration for Workspace 1 allows version control, enabling tracking of differences and reverting to previous versions of the semantic model. D. Saving Model 1 as a Power BI project, PBIP, file stores the semantic model as individual text-based definition files, which can be edited in VS Code and tracked in Git. Why are the others incorrect? B. Saving as a PBIT, Power BI template, file does not expose the individual item definition files for editing in VS Code, nor does it support direct Git integration for version control. C. Enabling users to edit data models in the Power BI service does not support editing item definition files in VS Code or tracking differences and reverting versions via Git.
You have a Fabric workspace named Workspace 1 that is assigned to a newly created Fabric capacity named Capacity 1. You create a semantic model named Model 1 and deploy Model 1 to Workspace 1. You need to publish changes to Model 1 directly from Tabular Editor. What should you do? The options are Option A, for Workspace 1, enable Git integration. Option B, for Model 1, enable external sharing. Option C, for Workspace 1, create a managed private endpoint. Option D, for Capacity 1, set XMLA endpoint to read-write.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords, publish changes, tabular editor, fabric capacity, semantic model.
The correct answer is option D, for Capacity 1, set XMLA endpoint to read-write.
Why is this correct? D. To publish changes from external tools like tabular editor to a semantic model in Fabric, write access must be enabled. This requires setting the XMLA endpoint property of the capacity 1, to read-write. Why are the others incorrect? A. Git integration is used for version control and synchronization with a repository, not for enabling direct write access from external tools like tabular editor. B. External sharing allows sharing semantic models with external users or tenants, which is unrelated to enabling write access via XMLA endpoints. C. Managed private endpoints secure connections to data sources from the workspace, but they do not enable XMLA write capabilities for external tools.
You have a Fabric warehouse that contains a table named Table 1. Table 1 contains 3 columns named Sales Amount, Product Category, and Transaction Date. You need to create a Microsoft Power BI query that will calculate the total sales amount of each product category for transactions that occurred during the last quarter. Which 2 actions should you perform in the Visual Query Editor? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. The options are Option A, for the Transaction Date column, select Remove Duplicates. Option B, for the Transaction Date column, select Keep Top Rows and set number of rows to 90. Option C, for the Transaction Date column, select Filter Rows and set the value to last quarter. Option D, for the Product Category column, select Group By and Sum the Sales Amount column. Option E, for the Sales Amount column, select Transformation Number column, Standard, select Add, and then set the value to 90.
To arrive at the correct answer, we focus on the keywords, total sales amount of each product category, transactions that occurred during the last quarter, Visual Query Editor.
The correct answers are option C, for the Transaction Date column, select Filter Rows and set the value to last quarter. And option D, for the Product Category column, select Group By and Sum the Sales Amount column.
Why is this correct? C. Filtering the Transaction Date column by last quarter restricts the dataset to only include transactions from the specified time period. D. Grouping by product category and summing sales amount calculates the total sales amount for each product category as required. Why are the others incorrect? A. Removing duplicates from transaction date would incorrectly delete valid transactions that occurred on the same date, leading to inaccurate sales totals. B. Keeping the top 90 rows does not accurately filter for the last quarter, as it only limits the row count regardless of actual transaction dates. E. Adding 90 to the sales amount column is a mathematical transformation that alters the sales values instead of filtering or aggregating the data.